brought these lovely two out to come teach a seminar tonight and tomorrow. After the seminar, we'll be doing sparring with them as well. This is Millicent Rowan, and she comes from the east, and she's going to be teaching some lovely stuff tonight. And then this is Drake. He comes from the south, and he will be teaching some lovely stuff tomorrow night. Okay, so go ahead, we'll grab some water, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get together, I'll get the sound ready, and then we will all hop in. So thank you guys all for coming, and we'll go ahead and we'll get started.
Hi, my name's Millicent Rowan. It's great to see you all here. Grateful to Nova for getting us out. John Drake will be chiming in as we're going. If you have questions, I'm going to have a little section to ask the questions, just to keep it a little bit more organized. Initially, I was going to do a quick talk about teaching female fighters, as well as being a female fighter, and some of the pitfalls that I've run into, some of the things I've experienced. And if anyone has questions about that, please let me know. You ready? Yeah. So I've been fighting for 11 years. I started in Onsteora, Texas, and initially as a 19-year-old female fighter who had some skill coming in, I got a lot of weird feedback, a lot of weird input. I was told that I couldn't do a lot of things specifically because I was female, as well as that I could do things specifically because I was female. Personally, those never matched up with my reality, ever. So my philosophy is when I teach somebody, and it sounds like Nova has a similar philosophy, teach them wherever they're at. If you have a student who has immobile hips, they might not be able to do what you're asking right now. I would also encourage them to strengthen and stretch and get their body moving better. But I would never tell them, well, your hips are like that because you're a girl. There's no way around it. That's it. It's not going to be productive for them. It puts them in a box, and that typically makes it harder for them to perform long term. Some things that I have run into having a uterus is that when a big tournament is coming up, because of how my cycle hits me, I actually take birth control pills before the tournament, because I will lose a tournament if I have a severe cramp on that day. I will lose a tournament just because my body kicks me. Some fighters are going to have that. Anyone with a uterus really could have that. And so as a teacher, if you feel like your student just keeps having a really hard time on particular times of the month, it might be worth it to talk to them about it. Obviously, you can't give medical advice, but if they want to talk to their doctor about something to do to help them not be in severe pain during a tournament and lose because their body got them, I think that's worth it. Some people have also talked about bleeding at, I'm sorry about menstrual stuff, anyway, bleeding at wars, that they will have to take off their armor. So especially on the heavy field, we don't have this as much in rapier, but being able to actually do sanitary things for yourself at war can cause people to not be willing to get back on the field. So something to talk to them about how they can make it easier on themselves. Or, unfortunately, what I did was take medication so I don't have a menstrual cycle at war. Because if it pulls you off the field and it stops you from fighting, you're not going to progress. Some things that I have run into that I think is cultural is that when I start a female fighter, sometimes she'll be less likely to attack and a little bit more on the timid side. I have a lot of male fighters who have the same issue, but I would over-encourage them to swing that pendulum to being hyper-aggressive. And I tell them, like, at practice for a while, I want you to go. I want you to kill quickly, and I want you to kill aggressively, and if you die for it, that's going to be okay, because you need to swing your impulse to the other side. Just like if you had a fighter who showed up and all they want to do is just rip up their opponent without defending themselves, they need to roll it in the other way. I would have them back up, absorb the shot, never attack unless they are protected. That's how I've mitigated that type of thing. That's straight up cultural. Like, that ain't no reason for that to be there, but it is there sometimes. Does anyone have questions or experiences that they've had that they want to share? Yeah?
What's the biggest tournament you've ever fought in?
I've won the Kings and Queens Champion tournament in the East Kingdom. So it's the East Kingdom's largest tournament that we have, and I won that a year and a half ago or so. Plus, there's, of course, wars that have big tournaments.
The biggest tournament you just fought in, probably Rosa Golf.
Oh, yeah, Rosa Golf was 200 people?
200 people, something like that.
Yeah.
And you got third.
Yep. So that was his last Gulf Wars, personally. If anybody doesn't have questions about that, you can always tag me afterwards if you have private questions, whatever. I also wanted to go through maximizing your range, because to me, as a shorter fighter, and again, a lot of women are going to be on the shorter side, everyone needs to maximize their range to use their body in the optimal way. However, if you have less range, it's from the beginning, you really have to do it. Because if I fight against somebody and I underextend, or I just kind of lean, but I don't really use my legs to protect myself, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to reach them. So, I also have a handout I can give people later. The main ways that I like to maximize my range is instead of standing in front of somebody and doing my biggest lunge that I can in a single tempo, typically, I would have people, I teach a very square stance. I know Nova teaches a lot of different stances. So the more squared up kind of boxer stance is what I always promote. So from there, I will have people lunge forward and gather. So lunge forward, gather. The back foot comes up to protect you. Never the back foot first, but the front foot, back foot, and you're kind of inchworming forward. The reason to do that is if we were fighting, and I wanted to get into range with you, if I do little steps and then extend, I can sneak in closer. I can get a little bit into more optimal time to attack. If I'm really far away from you and I just go, ah, like, maybe I'll hit you. Maybe you'll parry it, because I came from extremely far away. For taller fighters, something that I learned very recently, having taught somebody with very long legs who's 6'2", he actually needed to save his max lunge for the exact right moment. If he tried to use that all the time, it's like 1,000 years before he gets to his opponent. It takes way too long. So he had to use those little nibble steps, those little probing steps. You can also change your angle a little bit. Nova does this all the time. To get into a better position before you take a huge tempo to attack. Does anyone have questions about how that works? You're familiar with it already?
Did you say tempo?
Tempo, yes. Another piece. These kind of go hand in hand, and they're appropriate for really all styles. Even if you're not squared up, even if you're more linear, I believe in having everyone deepen their crouch a little bit. Unless you're already pretty low, obviously, like, there's eventually you're too crouched. But typically having some power in your legs is going to be a more powerful place to be. A lot of people that I teach will stand very upright with straight legs, and they cannot do the gather lunge. They cannot extend their range because they have lost all of it being vertical. To condition people, I actually have them do wall squats, meaning you squat with your back against the wall and hold it for a certain amount of time, take a short break, and go back into it, or lunges or general squats. Because your quads for fencing are the most important muscle, in my opinion. They're incredibly important. Your core is probably secondary to that. But if you don't have strong legs that could really explode forward and get you to your opponent, you're never going to get there. They're going to parry you. They're going to run away. So my ideal would be to not only use those gathers, but get yourself loaded and low. So you can do a lot of little gathers. And you can do them backwards. That running backwards, but keeping yourself in stance instead of switching, typically can help you parry a little bit better, help you protect yourself a little bit better, because your swords are staying in the same area instead of them opening up in different ways as you change. If you're doing a particular movement that Nova has taught you, obviously listen to him. But I usually like to keep people sort of controlled and in their own box. That way they can naturally know where their defense is. Any questions about that? Yeah.
So come on your stance.
Yep.
So one thing a lot of times we look at, and I look at this when I'm teaching people, is whether there's tension in the back leg, right? Because you can have a lot of different stances, but if you're going to go forward fast and far, if they don't have any Like if there's not these muscles aren't coiled and sprung, and her weight isn't over that leg, then it doesn't matter, right?
So if I'm here,
you even think,
this
some of
doesn't
the more
count.
back-weighted stances, which I'm not a big fan of, but that tension is still there, right? So, or even sometimes you can even be kind of even a little more forward, but you're still tension, right? So tension in whichever leg. If we're talking about going forward, you have to put the tension and the weight through that leg. You can generate power from that leg to go forward, and that will help. That's what allows you to extend that range.
Right. So to be dramatic about it, if I'm standing here, so there's no tension in the back leg anymore.
Rowan, and I love the stuff, and especially quads. Yeah, if your quads aren't burning when you're practicing,
Yeah.
you're not doing it right.
We've been fighting with Nova for 2 days. My quads are dead.
Oh my God.
Never mind. I like to smoke.
Could you, you've been demonstrating it really well, but they may not necessarily pick it up.
Yeah.
Could you talk about the distance you move in your initial step, where your balance is at the end of that, and then how do you recover that back foot, and how close your back foot is to your front foot when you cover, because obviously maybe you don't want to necessarily come together.
That's a great question, actually. That's a very good, to be more clear about it. And if you want to, line up and lunge, and I can also help critique while we're here. But Miguel was asking how far to go, typically, and how the back foot gathers up. So in a much slower demonstration, if I'm here and I'm taking a small step, that step is about half of my foot's length as a nibble, because I'm trying to just get closer. A habit that I specifically have as a fighter is taking tempos with my feet that are too long. So a way to mitigate that is to take very small steps. They can be an inch. They're usually about a half a foot.
We'll see.
Because if you're just sitting there going, like, it's not really getting you anywhere either, that's not great.
Cool. Check.
Then as the back foot comes up, he is correct that this is not ever what I would ask of you. If you stand, if you don't mind, getting into this position,
Whenever you go to
if you
talk,
lunge forward, like just a short step,
this one, right?
and bring your back foot up. If you bring your back foot up so far
This one,
that your toes are in line with your heel,
upside.
you can feel that lack of balance.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it takes the coil out of the back
So I
leg.
hit it twice.
Oh,
Okay.
cool. So
Whereas,
if you hit it once, I think it mutes.
If you lunge forward and bring your foot up about a
testing.
foot's length between each
hit
other,
it once, turns yellow.
that typically is a very strong place to be. It can be back a little further. It can be up a little further. There is some wiggle room, depending on your balance and what you're about to do next to your opponent. But I want you to feel it. And a very important part of this, I love to do it in front of a mirror. Oh, there's a mirror behind me. Never mind. Not helpful. The ideal piece is that if you're sideways to a mirror and you lunge forward and gather that back foot, your head stays even. You could even put a book on your head. And if it falls, that's not correct. A lot of people, when they're first learning it, will kind of gallop. If that is happening, all of your energy that is being used vertically is being wasted. I want all of your energy to go forward into your opponent as best you can. Pretty much all of the fundamentals of fighting, to me, are taking all this chaos and funneling it into your opponent. So all of my movements are going to go forward, not up and down, not left and right, ideally. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, a great answer.
Okay.
I also have a question.
Yes.
So, when I'm like this, I just don't know how to spoil my leg.
Don't know how to coil your leg. Will you stand this way?
I don't know how to spin it.
So here, if you feel your weight rock back onto that back leg a little bit, not from the top, so it's not this one, but slide your pelvis backwards, like you're sitting on a chair a little bit. That, yeah. And then you start to feel strong here. That's more correct. So if you feel like you're not coiling that back leg, that's what he was saying, is that he didn't feel like he could really get the weight into that back leg. If you take your pelvis and slide it back, that puts weight into that back leg. If you stick your butt out, that doesn't do it. If you lean your head, that doesn't do it. Really, all of your foundation is coming from here. And when you're going forward, you're driving forward from that pelvis. It's coming up and underneath you. You're not leaving it behind. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Does anyone else have questions about this part?
Yeah, I was sorry.
Yes, Dan.
I was standing behind you and I missed it.
You're fine.
Can I see the stick? Can I see the stance? And, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
one more time?
So typically, I teach a square stance.
Okay.
So, but in general, coiling your legs is going to always be good, putting energy into your back thigh. And then as I lunge forward, or really, this is the nibble steps. Take a small step, and then the back foot always comes up. So I'm keeping the distance between my feet the same. I'm not leaving this way far out, and then eventually getting this up. These are all coming together. It can also go backwards. What? We could? Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and make a nice line, everyone. Grab some space, and this way we can work on that stance that you guys have
Yeah,
been.
that's a good idea.
Because, so I have a lot of people that say,
Oh, okay, cool.
On the balls of your feet on both front and back.
To be honest, the back foot always, ball foot. The front foot, as I lunge, it's going to be heel toe.
But from your initial stance, mostly.
Yeah, and for those nibble.
Extreme relaxed back leg.
Yeah.
But really, like anything from as long as you could slide a piece of paper under there.
Yeah.
Like under your heels, you should probably have it on both. But
And
back leg is more important.
And honestly, as I'm feeling it, like if I close my eyes, most of the weight is on the ball of my foot and the front foot, and the nibble steps are stay on the bottom of the foot.
Then ball up. Okay.
Yeah, but if you take a long lunge, I'm not going to make you try to land on your ball of your foot.
face the mirror.
Face the mirror.
It'll give you more room to be able to make more group.
We got all the special.
So Drake and I can go through and kind of help you guys as you're going.
We can pretty much line up a person per cone. You guys can come up all the way to the cone.
And again, I prefer square, but if you typically fight in a more linear stance, pick your stance. This should still function just fine. So another important part that I missed, and I apologize, the distance between your feet, left to right, does matter. Typically, I would get into like, does anyone sprint or do any sprinting? Yeah. So if you're in a sprinter stance, your feet are not in line with each other left to right. You would have your feet about a foot's width apart, or really hip width apart is a really great place to be. And then you step your front foot forward, and then you get down. So if you find that you're getting into the stance, and you look in the mirror, and it feels like your back heel is starting to cross towards the other heel, I'll walk around and show. I'll stand on a box. So what I'm saying is, if this starts to happen, where you're going heel to heel, that is not appropriate. If you do that, you're going to sacrifice some of your range and some of your balance. And we're talking about maximizing your range. So you're trying to keep underneath yourself in a sprinter stance. The feet will go forward, but you never want them to be able to clip to each other. Does that make sense? So feel free to hop into your stances, and we're going to walk around and talk to you guys. I want you to just take little nibble steps forward and backwards as best you can. I know it's crowded, so this is perfect. This is excellent because you can feel they can see the tension in the back leg and the distance between the feet. For this one, I actually would want you to, if you can, slide this foot away from the other a little bit. Nice. This is good. You could actually shorten your stance a little bit. The reason being, when you get really long, it's going to be hard to launch. This part of your launch has already been taken up. So if you feel like you're kind of getting strung out, try to kind of come back, step just 1 foot's width, foot's length away from each other. You could even tighten it up a little bit more than that. And then crouch into that back leg. And ideally, you'll bring your back toe up, your back heel up, toe down, so you could explode forward. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Nice. That was a good skip back, too. I like it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sick. Hello. Did you have a question? Do it. Show me. Ah, okay. So you're trying to skip as part of it. I want you to come, just hold your feet together. Get on the balls of your feet. Yeah. Step 1 foot in front of the other. And sink, right? So we're sitting on a chair. We're upright, pelvis forward. It's a big, powerful position. So from here, I want you to just lift your front foot and step it a little bit. And then let the back foot come up. Yes. Lift the front foot, step it, let the back foot come up. And I'm going to touch your shoulder if that's all right. Do it slow until you can keep your top from going up and down. Because you want to do it slow initially to keep that kind of going. And then eventually, what will really help you is when you can powerfully launch off the back leg. Because what I'm seeing you do is you're almost thinking about gathering before you've even stepped.
Right.
So you want to think about launching. The weight, the energy is in that back foot to drive you forward like a bullet. Yeah. But make sure every time this happens, every time you're skipping, by the way, you're also standing up. And the weight is, the top of your body is doing this. So if you can sit down and make sure that this is powerful. We all do. We all do. Crouches are great. And while I brush my teeth in the morning, I do wall squats. Because you're doing 2 minutes of wall squats every time you brush your teeth anyway. It's going to burn, but it's really good for you. It's good for all sports, though. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Because it's come up a couple times. When we're doing this little step, again, the purpose of this is to be able to control the fight so you can get to an optimal position to fire and use your maximum range. So when we're in stance, I stay on the balls of both my feet, and I pretty much stay there the whole time. With a lunge, I do go heel toe. But that's the final movement. That's when your opponent cannot block you. That is when you're taking a long tempo to kill them. Does that make sense? But for right now, we're on our toes. Big thing to focus on is engaging that back leg. And you really want to feel like you're driving off that back leg, like you're slamming that foot into the earth and launching yourself forward. That's where all your power is. We actually, John and I were talking about this. We got this like nasty, I got a blister. He just has a bad callus. Driving the ball of the foot into the ground as hard as you can. That's part of the launch forward. Enjoy.
Get back to it.
If there's anyone I missed. That's very nice.
Question on this. So I mean, I'm just doing it with my left foot for now. But so noticing your leg is kind of like at this, or the back foot is kind of at this 30-degree angle. Is that like a conscious choice, or is it just more of whatever's coming?
It can be a little bit of both.
Because especially because I notice people that are talking about the tight kind of footwork.
Yep.
And some people are like this, and some side left. But I'm noticing you're just very particularly very consistently your foot is at that angle. Is that a conscious choice, or is it just more common?
Drake and I fought with it a lot as far as if both toes forward is best or teed off is best, and we found that somewhere in the middle is optimal.
Okay.
Both toes forward also does work just fine.
Okay.
I really hate this one.
So, yeah, I don't know, because it makes it for back weight, it kind of makes sense, but I just noticed it was
yeah, it's almost always toes forward or at that 30.
Yeah,
and honestly, when I feel it roll, I feel like when I'm here, if I roll straight off the front of the foot, it's less powerful versus launching off like this big, kind of this circle on our sambas, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the best fencing shoe.
You'll find that your shoe gets worn out. You can tell how you use your feet.
Oh yeah, no, I got the whole. I blew out a pair last year. It was really sad.
Yeah, you look like you're floating very well, which is nice. Let's see, there's a little bit of up and down movement. I think that's nice though. I like it.
So
Yeah.
it feels like I'm tearing up the ball with
It hurts. To be honest with you, my foot hurts real bad right now.
So it means I'm doing okay.
It's probably right then, which sucks. But let's.
Feels rough on the left ball, your left foot. Yeah, it's probably right.
So while you're doing it, try going a little slower because there's more up and down movement than you need. Yeah, that's a little missing. Because while we're drilling it, while you're practicing it, you might as well overemphasize not bobbing. Nice. Nice. Nice.
That was good.
That was lovely. Thank you. Hello. Yeah. So for this, I would take shorter steps and really emphasize. Right now, what I'm seeing is that the head is forward and the pelvis is back. So you want to bring that pelvis into alignment and just lift your chest. Then we're going to weight your back leg. And as you're lunging, do shorter ones initially and worry more about how even is my head. Is my pelvis separated from my head? Instead of what often happens is people kind of be pushing and you don't want that up and down movement. Nice. Really good thing to do at home in front of a mirror because you don't even need your swords. You can see if that bobbing is happening. Do you have any questions? Looks good.
Yeah. It is all the way down.
Yeah. Still got
Let's do it. So, again, the purpose of what you just did was to be able to have power in your back leg, get into an optimal position to be able to attack your opponent. The next piece is, what is your longest lunge? And what does that typically look like? So once you're in a good position, Drake, if you don't mind helping me, Drake's better at this than I am. So typically, let me make sure mine is on.
Thank you.
You don't have to lunge at me necessarily, it's just demonstrating the lunge.
Static lunge?
It's static lunge. So we're calling it a static lunge, meaning I haven't, this is our gather lunge. The back foot comes up to get into position. And then we have a static lunge. And for me, the static lunge is you're making a nice straight line from your back leg to your sword point. Ideally, this is a really straight line. Your nipple is going to your knee as you're leaning forward. If you just go to here, you've lost some of your range. If you don't bend your front leg, you've lost some of your range. So you're fully going into the static lunge, and then you explode out of it and are back into your normal stance. From here, it can feel like a lot, but if you brought up your quads, like we were talking about, you have nice, strong legs to be able to get into it and get back out. Do you want to demonstrate it too?
Could talk about it real quick? Yeah. So we fight in a squared stance, right? Which means that we have less range from our stance. But when we lunge, like Rowan was demonstrating, we profile out here, right? And Rowan can even profile, but her keeps her hand forward, but she's getting all the distance between her shoulder blades and her hips by rotating that flat, right? So that gains an extra range. The other thing is this is a super committed attack that you don't want to do, like this, if this was your attack you did 90% of the time, you would probably die a lot, but it's useful to have. And when you're drilling, like I recommend everyone go home and like do lunge drills against a target or something, or with partners or whatever. I would always say most of the time, definitely do lunges as far as you can, because it's easier to dial it back than to dial it forward. Yeah. And me and Rowan have definitely killed and won tournaments with this maximum range lunge, which we call static lunge because the back foot stays static versus a gather or dynamic lunge where we bring the back foot up. So I'll show the way I do it here is as I normally fight sword and dagger. I think that should be better if we rotate that way.
I also don't have to do it at me, it doesn't matter.
So from here, I hear and I try to keep to this straight line. I try to profile my body as much as possible. Yeah. And a lot of people say to put their hand back here. I like to keep my hand here because I don't really lose much range, but it's still quick. I still have very defensive. Right. And it's you're really only in that for a very brief moment. Right.
It's only to strike your opponent and then you're getting out of there.
Yeah.
And you could, a version of it that Drake does really well is a very strong static lunge that actually recovers to the side. But the only time you can do that is if you've done a very strong lunge, letting this front leg really take the impact and then recover. Because you're almost falling at that point.
Yeah.
But that's a full commitment lunge. If you do it like, and then here, it's not it. That's not it.
That other lunge on the off angle gives the advantage also of leaving on a different angle than you came in on, right? I entered on this line here, and then I leave on this line.
Right. So if I strike back at a ghost.
So I end up, and in general, if you're fighting a right-handed opponent, you want to rotate to their offside. So you're right. So like Rowan is a right-handed fighter. So if I rotate this way, it is better because she will have a little less range. It's a little harder for her to attack me over here. Then if I rotate to this side, she has more range here, right? And you can literally see this by, if she sticks her hand out straight, like over here,
start to lose it.
There's less range over here. So like I have a better angle on that. So generally rotating offside. It doesn't matter it's a small difference, but it's there and it helps.
One other piece that we can add that before we do a little lunge practice is, it's kind of odd, but if you extend your swords out, wherever you can, this palm up position actually has maximum range for your arm. So most of us, they kind of start quillions vertical and we shoot out. But if you shoot out and finish palm up, the way it aligns your shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist gives you just a slightly more of a range. If your elbows hyperextend, you want to be careful because this can actually exacerbate that. They can make it worse. So please protect yourself.
Don't lock your joint when you extend your arm. Keep a little tiny Like
Little
you're
bit.
really not even losing any range there. You're just not
Hurting your
jerking this
joint.
joint. And if you throw that out there without that, and there's a big piece of metal here that's going to keep going, you can hurt your elbow.
Right. So that's another thing to add. So while you're practicing your maximum drill, your maximum lunge drill, I would also finish palm up. You can do this with or without a sword. Palm up. That's an overextended elbow. Try to keep that less extended. If your elbow is making a Z shape, that is too far.
So
Less. Yeah. So if you, that's closer, yeah. So if you're extending forward, and just be here, yeah. So you're like driving on the same line. But if you feel like you're kind of doing this one, it's gonna be real bad for that elbow.
If anyone's
way better.
if anyone's done archery, it's the same thing about not turning your elbow in so the string hits you. It's the same thing if you've done archery. It's the same idea, just the other arm.
So if we want to line up and have people do some deep lunges, we can do that.